It's the place on Cahuenga Boulevard in Studio City that you've probably driven by 1,000 times.
This is the road to Hollywood from Studio City. They drive by it every day. And the signs are a lot of them. There's like 5 signs up there saying what's happening, where we are, that we're here.
It's the Baked Potato, and it's been serving up live music and massively overstuffed spuds nightly since 1970. We'll get to the potatoes in a minute, but first, the music. The room is small and intimate, one of the best in the city to hear live music. It sells out most nights because the Baked Potato is home to music royalty. Its founder, Don Randy, who started it all 49 years ago, is an original member of LA's fabled Wrecking Crew, session musicians who played on all the big hits of the 60s and 70s.
We did 21 million selling records in a row for Phil Spector. One after another, the Ronettes, all the way up to the Righteous Brothers with You Lost That Love and Feeling.
The musicians were really the unsung heroes of all those hit records.
That's one of my favorite songs that I have played. And Bill and Bobby, you know, they were so incredible, you know, and I had heard of them. They were Orange County kids, you know.
You lost that love and feeling, now it's gone, gone, gone. The story of these session greats is told in the documentary The Wrecking Crew, directed by Denny Tedesco. His dad, Tommy Tedesco, was one of the crew.
They were the stone-cold rock and roll professionals, and there may never, ever be a group of rock and roll musicians of that caliber again.
Are you ready, Boots?
What happens in LA in the early 60s, it started getting really busy in rock and roll dates. And the record companies, because it was a single track, didn't trust the real bands to play. It was easier to get these session musicians go in and go out, get it done in 3 hours.
With Spector, there was 4 or 5 of us sometimes playing piano, and 5 or 6 guitars, because that was his wall of sound. And that's what we were called originally. When Brian Wilson heard Be My Baby, he said, oh, I have to have those guys, I gotta get those guys.
Wilson did get those guys, and the Wrecking Crew played on many of the Beach Boys albums, including Pet Sounds, which is considered one of the most influential albums of all time. Bassist Carol Kay remembers the session in the Wrecking Crew documentary.
I'll just go into this. Now, that's a jazz walking line. You knew that this kid was into something really, really great.
The room had a spirit to it, with Hal being the leader, you know, and all the guys working together and thumping and pumping.
When we did Good Vibrations, it was 3 months in the studio, coming in, back, another piano would pump. I'd play an organ on the next date till we got it right. And the only one that knew where it was going was Brian Wilson. It was all upstairs. He's brilliant, genius, you know.
Glenn Campbell was also part of the Wrecking Crew and played guitar on many of these hits with Randy.
We were so busy. I mean, we would go from one to the other to the other.
Glenn Campbell could not read a note, but he would get the parts quicker than anybody. I mean, he was just so amazing.
A little less conversation, a little more action.
As was Hal Blaine, considered one of the best drummers of the era. By day, Don Randy and the Wrecking Crew were making pop music history, and at night, like now, performing at the Baked Potato.
This is a blues entitled, How Can I Miss You If You Never Leave, Baby.
The great artists that, you know, decide to have a club, I think Randy he understood that. I used him on several sessions as a piano player, and he knew how to make a club that musicians felt good in.
Partly, I think the reason this club has lasted this long is because it's this size.
Co-owner Justin Randy has been managing and performing at the club for 31 years.
Play it now, my baby.
If you get much bigger than this, it loses because it becomes not intimate. And really, jazz is really meant to be, I mean, that front row is 4 feet from the stage. you know, and that's real. And when you have a Grammy-winning superstar standing here, which we do often, this month 3 of them, that's what happens here.
You know what else happens here? The potatoes, weighing in at over a pound each.
Hand-picked Idaho potatoes, delivered here weekly. So they're huge. Every time you set that plate down in front of somebody, they cannot believe what they're looking at because it's really that big. And you're like, no one serves big food anymore.
24 different varieties of baked potatoes. By last count, 750,000 of them served up since 1970. All topped with a variety of fresh ingredients in this tiny kitchen.
I'm gonna create a place that's music and baked potatoes.
Okay.
So what was the circumstance from which you
The circumstance,
came up with this?
it's actually a fun story to tell. I was doing a show in London, a Raquel Welch special, and I had seen these jacketed potatoes, as they call them in England, wrapped in chrome foil, and they were tiny potatoes, and they were sold on stands, and there'd be guys outside, you know, peddling.
And the idea of baked potatoes with the side of jazz in LA was born.
We've been vegetarian for 49 years. Most of our menu is all vegetables and everything's fresh. Oh, that's the other thing about the food. It's fresh and made to order. We don't own a microwave. So it's baked, it's sauteed. If you want cheese, it's melted. It's just one of those funny things that we've been here so long that what we do is hip now, especially with the food.
This club, it is the best of the best. If it wasn't for Don and the club, there were a lot of players that would never have had this opportunity. Music shouldn't have an age on it. So when you see Don here playing once a month, he's 82. The other guys in the band are in their 30s. You can still create at 82 as much as you can at 32.
As drummer Hal Blaine proved recently playing at his 90th birthday gig at the club. It was so impressive, Rolling Stones drummer Charlie Watts stopped by to hear the set.
It's just keeping yourself relevant, keeping yourself in people's minds, and finding new acts. And you know, I have young people that come here, and I have old people that come here, and that's key. You know, they need to all be comfortable in here and see something they can't believe.
The era of the sessions ended in the 70s.
Yeah.
Right now we're in 2019.
Yeah, it never stopped for me. You know, I kept right on going. It might have slowed down a little bit, you know, but I mean, last year I worked more than I have in the last 8 years. You know, it's just one of those things people remember and they want that sound, or they think they do, and they want to experiment. They'll call me in, and I'll go in, and I'm alone. It's a whole new era. And I think, I don't know if it's for the good, because I notice now all of a sudden everybody's starting to get back in the room again, so, which I love, you know. That's the way to do it.